All right, squad. Today I'm going to just run you through something I found recently on the Evil Martians website. So in case you didn't know, Evil Martians are an epic team contributor to pretty much all communities. They work with Rails, they work with JavaScript. They've released a whole bunch of cool packages. So they've released their Gemfile, or they update it every year. So this year I found a couple of cool ones that I found interesting. I want to run you through them. Let's go. Okay. So here you can see we have the page. And the Evil Martians, here they are. So let's have a quick look at this. Awesome website. So Evil Martians are basically an agency that build apps for a whole bunch of people, really big clients. And they, look at this, 2.5 bill. Yeah, work for the biggest and the best. Now, with that in mind, with all of that, they actually do a whole bunch of open source stuff. So if you jump into their open source tab, you can see all the things they do. They contribute, like I said, to Ruby, Rails, JavaScript, Node, TypeScript, React, you name it, because they have a whole bunch of different clients, they have a whole bunch of different requirements. So it's really cool that they actually release this stuff to the public. You can see that 165,000 stars and 121 projects. So what I wanted to have a look at today is the Gemfile they use for their Rails projects, so they are avid users of Rails. Now, I found this really interesting, and I think it's a really good thing to do once in a while. It's just like review the Gemfiles and see if there's anything that's out there that you aren't using inside your project. Could really help us out. So let's have a look through this and see how we go. All right, so scrolling down. So every year they have the, you can see here the whole intro, and then down the bottom here, so they've got the different sections. So Rails fundamentals. All right, so this is pretty basic stuff. But you can see they have Rails, and then they use PG, right? So they're using Postgres, which is an interesting choice, is a choice that I like to make as well. They're not using SQLite here, and they're not using MySQL, all right? So that's something to highlight. And they are running Puma. I used to run in big production apps, I used to run Passenger. I think the reason why did we do that in the last business, I can't remember exactly why, but Puma is actually the default, and they're running with that here, okay? Moving on to background jobs, this is pretty much a industry standard choice here, is Sidekick. Now, you can use Sidekick in the standard version, or you can pay for the pro version, but this is a very solid choice in production. So I'm just gonna bump this up a little bit more. You can see here, so Sidekick, right? So that's a great choice. Now, if you don't know what Sidekick is, it just handles your background jobs, and you can run, it uses Redis to communicate between your app server and your workers, and it's very good. It's got a little UI that you can run as well, so you can see where the jobs are. Very robust. In the newer projects that I'm running, I'm actually running SolidQ which is a database-backed version. Now, it's been pretty good, and it's in low volume. I haven't seen it in super high volume yet, so I can't really make a comment on that, but I have used Sidekick with big volume, and it's been flawless. So they are also using the Sidekick grouping and Sidekick limit fetch. So this Sidekick grouping allows you to buffer in queue jobs and process them in batches. So that's handy, right? So if you just want to batch jobs, that's really interesting. And then the limit fetch, what does this one do? For example, to avoid generating more than a single large Excel export at a time. Okay, so you can actually have limits on the exports here. So that's really cool. So they're saying you can go with Pro or Enterprise to get all the features, but you can also just use third-party gems is what they're doing here. So they are saying that Sidekick comes with a couple of trade-offs, and the first one is that it requires Redis, right? So that it does mean you need another piece of infrastructure you are maintaining another piece of infrastructure, all right? So, and it's saying here, second, using Redis for job storage is prone to transactional integrity errors, okay? So they are using, So what we can see here is they're actually recommending either using Good Job, and it uses Postgres, or using SolidQ, which is actually now coming straight from the Rails team. So if you were going to choose one of these two, I would probably recommend using SolidQ, because it is part of the Rails ecosystem, and it is pretty good, but it isn't mature yet. Right? So they are saying that and highlighting it here. They're waiting for Rails 8, but they are working on it really well. It's constantly being updated, and a lot of bugs are being caught. I have noticed though, one thing to call out on SolidQ is in development on Mac, it doesn't seem to fire all the time. So you do have jobs that sit there and don't get fired, and if you restart the server, you'll see they get fired. And that's when running the Puma worker. So if you run them in independent processes, it probably will work. But yeah, when you run it with using the Puma worker, so I'll show you, that just happens inside of when you go to config a Puma, and then you add this plugin. I think it's this, but this seems to have issues for me sometimes that the jobs don't actually run. In dev, it doesn't really matter. In production, it's been flawless. So now another thing that they're also doing is they're adding in this sked gem, which is for recurrent jobs. So it's like a cron jobs, right? So if you want to run something every single hour on every second day, you could use this sked gem, which is an interesting name. I've never seen this. Ged. And who did this? Oh, yeah, here we go. Oh, it's actually built by Evil Martians as well. So wherever you see this little logo here, you know it's by the team. They do so much good stuff. And then here we can just do our config schedule, have a cron job, and run a job. That's beautiful. I've never seen that before. Mwah. Love it. So moving on, factory worker Ruby. So that we use factory to enqueue and process jobs from different services. So for example, a machine learning service written in Python can send analysis results to a Ruby application and vice versa. All right, so factory is what they're using here. Ah, yes, a high performant job processing. So I think this is by the same team that made Sidekick. And yes, I think it looks like it is. And so it allows you to use it across platforms. It's not just Ruby, you can actually use it anywhere, which is really cool. So that's factory, and then you can get all these kind of things, but then if you pay for it again, you can get a whole bunch of stuff. But this is a monthly thing for enterprise, probably more for when you actually have lots of users. Moving down, we have active record extension. Okay, so what are they using here? Store attribute and store model. So the store attribute gem builds on top of the store assessor feature. So if you've ever used JSON-B, you can do a store assessor and you can say, let's just jump in, right? So I've got examples of this. Store assessor, right? Now, if you have, for instance, this here is a JSON-B. Let me bump this up so everyone can see. This is a JSON-B column here, right? And inside of that, we're gonna have values. We're gonna assign these. So now what we can do is we can actually call, when we're working with it, so we can go, let's say comment.timestamp seconds, right? Instead of saying comment.data and then, calling it like this, it's an easy way to use a store assessor, right? So they're now using this gem called store attribute, which allows them to extend the store assessor and adds typecasting support, right? So that's really cool. So you could say this type of this attribute can only be this value. So it could only be a number, right? So we don't get that when in usual. So Palcan, so let's just have a look here. So we can say store attribute coming from settings ratio, and you can limit it and you can tell it define its type. So that's really interesting. And that's probably something that I will add into Clipflow, because that will definitely save a lot of pain. So you're not storing strings as numbers and stuff like that. All right. So store model goes further and allows you to find custom model classes backed by JSON attributes. So what is that? That is very interesting. Let's have a look at this guy. So store model. I haven't seen this one, but this is really interesting. So you can wrap it with an active. So configuration, okay. So you can basically define a configuration class, and then you're saying the attribute for a product is a configuration, and then you can have different, that's interesting. That's probably more of, I haven't actually needed something like that before, but that's quite cool. All right, so now they're going on to some SQL specific. So we've got PG search, PostgreSQL, cursor, GemFX, and then scenic and or PG trunk. So scoping or feature like extensions, a couple of them, discard and group date. This is cool. So it helps. So we've got soft deletion, discard. That's kind of interesting. So if you want to soft delete records, so if you don't want to actually kill them, you just want to do like hidden true kind of thing. So that's an easy, probably just a little concern style feature here. Include discard model. And then what's it going to do? It's going to have discard and discarded at, and then it just adds the scopes here. So that's really cool. So we can just say, instead of deleting hard delete, there are times we don't want to hard delete something and we just want to just like hide it. And then I guess we could say all kept. So all kept discarded. And then when you discard one, so that's an interesting gem. So you can add that in. You can add these things relatively simply as well. Sometimes it may not be worth having the extra dependency there. And then what else do we have? We have group date. This is cool. So if you work with aggregates of dates, very, very cool. So the simplest way to group by day, week, hour of day. So if you want to do some sort of graph or even like a calendar where it's like all these things on this day, you can group by. That's really cool. Group by day created at. So that's the date column. That's really cool. That makes things very simple. Moving on to authentication. Okay, so yep, there we go. So no surprise seeing this guy here. Device is the OG authentication gem. Very simple to add. It's been used by so many people, but I would say that I prefer using something like Authentication Zero now. Now, I've worked with Device. The problem is you fight it. You fight it the whole time. So if you want to make something that isn't exactly how Device works, you're going to be fighting with the framework. Why I like this Authentication Zero is because what it does is it actually just generates all the controllers and the views and all the model data that you need to roll your own auth, right? So it's using all the has secure password and all these new Rails features, and it generates all the views for you and controllers, and then you can fully control them. Like, so you can actually go and customize how you want them, and you're not locked into a gem. So if the gem changes, breaks, or anything like that, there's always problems. This just makes it simple. I actually use this one in Clipflow. I think it's really cool, by Lazaro Nixon, sorry. And then, yeah, I would recommend that. And in Rails 8, it's coming with a generator, and it's inside it's actually DHH did it, and it's really just for, I think it's authenticating. They're also using Sorcery. So they're saying, there are a couple more canons before giving up and falling back. Okay, so these are the other ones you can use: Sorcery or JWT sessions. JWT is if you're going to build an API only application, and Sorcery, I haven't used Sorcery, so I'm actually not 100% sure. And then obviously with OAuth, I would use OmniAuth, right? So I think they're just saying, let's just skip the whole category and move on. So authorization. Now authorization, there's the two pieces. Authentication is, can you like log in? Are you allowed to come in? And then authorization is, what are you allowed to access, right? So I like to use Pundit. Now they're mentioning it here, but they've actually rolled their own action policy, which is cool as well. So I haven't used this, but I have seen it before. So it's their own version. So they're basically saying it's a better version of Pundit. So you can see here, so quick start is over here, install it, and then you can create a policy. And then it's like show. It's very, very similar, I'd say, to Pundit. So I guess that's just pick your poison. It's very important to have this in an app. So make sure you actually do choose one. For me, Pundit or action policy. Action policy is quite new it still hasn't even reached version 1, but it's been updated on June 21 versus if we went to Pundit. So if we go Pundit, Varvit Pundit, these guys also do a lot of stuff. When were they last updated? It doesn't even have a version. When's the change log? So if we have a look here, it changed last month as well, right? So we've got an update on there, fixed class. But this is stable. Like, I would say this is pretty stable. This is probably, you're not going to see many updates there. Okay, now here we go. This is the good one, HTML views or views. This is cool because I like to use this one. And now if you've come from React or anything else like that, it's hard to come back to the Rails way of just using ERB partials. I've tried that and it just still didn't stick with me. So view component for me is the way. Now, view components allow you to write components like components like React. Now, if you have a look in here in Clipflow, you can see we've got components. This is the basic or standard way of doing view components with a sidecar, where we've got the view here. But let's look at something with some JavaScript. So you can see here, we've got our stimulus and we've got our HTML ERB file, but then you have your class here. So for me, the maintenance of this wasn't 100%. So this is where view component contrib comes in, right? Now, Evil Martians basically came up with another gem that wraps view component and just makes it a bit cleaner on how you can interact with it, and a few helpers. Now this for me is I absolutely love this one. So this one here, if you look now, we have app views component, and then inside here we can now nest. You see video reviewer, and then all the components that belong to video reviewer live inside of it. And you can see in each component, it has all its files in the folder. Now this is very much like React. So if you've come from React, you'd have index.ts or JS or JSX, I should say, and TSX, and you can have your styles if you have that, or any images. So this makes it very similar to React, and I really like using this. So you still get to use your stimulus here, and for me, I really like stimulus. I like how it connects. So that's really cool. If you're going to use view components, make sure you use this as well. Now, lookbook is similar to storybook in React or JavaScript world. So it allows you to actually view your components, and then obviously turbo Rails. Okay, very, very cool. So yeah, if you're writing views and you want to do it the Rails way, this is obviously deviating slightly from that, but it's still, you're using ERB and you're using stimulus, and it feels great. So asset management. Okay, so these guys are using Vite, I believe it's pronounced, or Vite, or however side of the story you want to play on, to manage their bundling. I'm using ESBuild just because I think it was the easiest thing for me to set up. I didn't have to add another gem here. So inside of Clipflow, we are running, if we go into our Gemfile, we're running CSS bundling Rails. So, and then also JS bundling. All right. So that's what we're running, and that's part of Rails. So I'm just running with the stock standard there. It's just most easy to get started. Now they also got someone image proxy and pre-mailer. So image proxy, own image proxy, and the companion gem. So let a dedicated proxy to do the hard work. So all your image. Okay, cool. So they must be running. They're running this extra service, right? So there's a pricing here, and they're offloading their image resizing off to another server. Now this makes a lot of sense if you don't want to roll your own. So I think that's probably a good idea. If you are using active storage, it is simple enough to do, but it is a bit slower, and you do have to make sure you're caching or, putting those images behind a CDN. That's cool. I like that service. Another one of their services, and the companion gem. Now the pre-mailer is styling email, right? This is very interesting. I haven't used this one before. I have had a look at it. What I chose to do was use I think it was a React-based template build, and it converts it all to HTML. And then I just grabbed that and put it into the mailers. Because in the end of the day, all your notification emails look very similar. So you're just changing pieces of it, and you basically wrap it in a template. So I'll just quickly show you what I mean. So if we just close this guy, open up this, and we go to app, views, mailers, then I've built a shared footer, which is there. And then we also have, where is the mailer? It's in the layout mailer. All right, so all your main stuff lives here. All right, and then I'm just injecting the yield here. I'm injecting each template, so depending on what you're doing. So if you're getting a new comment, we're just injecting this tiny bit of code there. All right, very simple. Moving on to APIs. So now with APIs and GraphQL, look, I'm probably not going to be writing GraphQL in Ruby. I've tried it before a few times, cannot get behind it. If you're running an API first Rails app, that's when you run Rails and API. I've just done a video on that recently with Next.js and Rails as API. This is a good one because this OJ serializer helps serialize JSON very fast. So that's cool. Elba, I haven't used. So if we have a look at Elba, what is Elba? Is a JSON serializer for Ruby. So what do you look like? So this is how we can define what it looks like. So what attributes, and then you can say attribute name with email, and then you can just call serialize on the user. So that's just a different way, instead of using JBuilder or something, to actually serialize. And I'm imagining Elba is super fast. But let's have a look. This was also released, so that is being worked on. And then they're saying you can use that, or Panko is the fastest serialization using a C extension, currently maintained and close to remit. Okay, cool. So basically you can choose either one of these. So you can use Elba with OJ and basically become super fast as well. Now, REST API documentation. Who likes to write that? Yeah, not me. So they've found a OpenAI create a schema. So that's cool. And they've done a little article here as well, documentation first. So that's really interesting. Craft your OpenAI schema by hand or with AI help. Excellent. So that's great. Now, GraphQL. Look, I'm, like I said, not that keen, but look at all these gems we probably need to use. So if this is up your alley, have a look at this. They got all sorts of things here, but to me, yeah, not for me. So we'll just keep moving right along. I think GraphQL's lost its shine. Big boys are using it, but yeah, I just think the good old REST is still really nice. And if you are small, probably just write it all in Rails and keep it simple until you have a big business, and then you can worry about all the big business fun. Okay, so logging and instrumentation. This is super important. Now, Yabida. Never heard of that. That's interesting. Is an instrumentation framework for Ruby and Rails. It comes with plugins for popular libraries and monitoring backend. So Yabida. Oh, look, it's another open Evil Martians product, which is cool. Built by. Now, what do? So you configure, and you can do metrics and stuff and start collecting. So that's cool. And then it also plugs into Datadog and New Relic. I would highly recommend using something like New Relic when you are running an app in production that is mission critical, because it will help you diagnose problems. I've actually started using Sentry. I think it's a bit cheaper, especially when you're smaller, and they've been really good. So let's have a I'll quickly give you a look at what that looks like. And then you can what you can see here is we have our projects, and then as errors occur in production, you can see them here. So it makes it really easy to diagnose issues. and it does a full breakdown for you. Exactly, look, someone's trying to hit this area here. Someone's trying to find WordPress nonsense, but you can see where it breaks. All right, so that's something we need to fix. This query is being redirected, this blog, into the wrong, and then it's thinking it's the article content because it's not getting an article. So that's really cool. But this stuff allows you to do traces, profiling, see where your database is slow, all those kind of things, see what kind of queries are running, everything. So I'm not on a paid plan right on Clipflow right now, but the more as you pay, you get more insights. Okay. All right, so log rage turns verbose Rails output into concise structured log. This is cool. So I've heard of log rage before. I haven't used it, but yeah, just compresses your logs into, there we go. So instead of seeing this in your logs, you get this, which is quite nice, right? So it just takes out all the nonce and makes it easier to find, especially when you're getting a lot of logs. And if you're paying for something like Papertrail or collecting all your log lines, this is gonna add up to money, and this is just gonna be cheaper, right? Shows you everything you need to show. All right, so that's really cool. I might actually add this to Clipflow. All right, now we also have Silencer, which can, the anti-logging gem. Now we got a health checking endpoint. Our logs become full of useless get up lines, which is that up endpoint. Every time it just checks to make sure the app's there. And you could add to the silencer gem and just say silence up. That's cool. Just again, clearing your logs. You only want to see the things that matter. All right, development tools. Here we go. So Bootsnap, obviously, we use that one all the time, but it's part of the Rails default bundle. So no introductions you needed. Yep, that just comes, we just use it. Makes it boot up faster, I believe. Hopefully, that's right. Now, database validations and database consistency helps enforce consistency between your model A and your database schema. All right, this is cool. Yeah, so this is really interesting. So if we just open up these guys, Toptail, nice. So yeah, keep your database consistency with better performance, and then it's gonna just tell you that you need to make sure all these things in sync. All right, and then you'll get the following performance improvement. All right, so we can use validates DB uniqueness, DB belongs to. Interesting, okay. Interesting. So we can actually get some performance improvements there. That's cool. And then database consistency. Jeez, null constraint. And this just, oh wow, okay, cool. So that just keeps everything in sync as well and just consistent. Avoid various issues due to inconsistencies, inefficiencies between the database schema and application models. Great, that happens, that definitely happens. So that's really cool. All these kind of things just really help catch problems before they arise. All right, moving on, we have isolator and after commit everywhere. All right, so Isolator helps identify such problems. Similarly, performing an API gateway request could lead to inconsistency in the third-party system in case of a rollback transaction. Isolator helps to identify such problems, and after commit everywhere provides a convenient API to perform side effects on successful commit. So Rails 7.2 comes with a similar feature, transaction after commit, as well as the option to automatically enqueue active jobs on. So you might not need after commit everywhere gem anymore. Okay, so that's, if you're running Rails 7.2, don't worry about it. They've fixed it. I think there was a problem there. Now, what do we have? So we have strong migrations. Make your migrations do not cause any downtime. Look, that's something we do want to avoid. So let's go strong migrations gem, catch unsafe migrations, right? We want to make sure that blocks get avoided. So these are the potentially dangerous. So it's going to tell you when all these things happen, renaming, changing column type, breaking. We don't want to break. There should also be something for index here. If you add an index that it hasn't been added concurrently, we want to make sure we always add indexes concurrently so it runs in the background. It doesn't block your whole DB because that's a disaster. And then Rails PG extras. I haven't seen this. So this is why we go through these things, because it just gives us a whole bunch of really cool stuff that I actually haven't used before. So what does it do? Okay, so it helps you to diagnose performance things in dev. That's cool. All right, so PG extras. And then Evil Seed, that sounds fun. Create partial anonymized dump of your production database to perform profiling and benchmarking locally. Okay, that's cool. So if you need to, sometimes in dev we have like 10 records, but in production we have 10,000 or 10 million. And we're like, it works in my machine, it's all good. We could get something like Evil Seed dump, like anonymized data, so there's no names, emails, or anything like that, and then run that data in dev to test. Great. All right, and then a whole bunch of profiling tools here. So if you want to do performance things, derailed benchmarks, rack mini profile, which is the very famous one, stack prof and veneer, and then speed scope. So for projects running on Rails 3.2, we recommend veneer. Next gen Ruby sampling profile with built-in support for Rails instrumentation. Awesome. Now, moving on to security. So you have bundle audit and scan your code base for security breaches regularly with Brakeman. All right, so Brakeman scan. And nowadays CI services provide their own security analysis, which can be used instead. All right, so if you are using CI on GitHub or Bitbucket, you can run it, but that's so cool. So Danger can level up your code review experience by automating routine tasks and highlighting important changes. Automatically attach labels. Man, that's cool. So let's have a look at this. Danger, I haven't seen this one before. Whoa. Where is... This is interesting. You come up with a message that declares a CI warning that runs a danger file. That's really cool. And you can integrate Danger into your CI service. Awesome. Okay, that's really cool. All right, so that's another thing if you're working with CI and team, very important. Next, Rails. Awesome. So this is useful for when updating Rails. It's going to show you and guide you through the process. That's really, really cool, especially for when you're working with big production environments. It'll run you through and tell you all the stuff that you can do. And then you can say, every now and then add code like this. Do things in the Rails way, do things in the Rails 6 way. Very, very cool. Okay, that one's 6. So next, Rails. All right. So attractor and cover band. Man, this Gemfile must be solid. I think it's listed at the end. Keeping code bases in a healthy state requires us to perform regular checkups and monitor the parts of the code that are hurting the most. You can use static analysis. There are plenty of tools for that, but the choice is attractor and production covered by cover band on perspective on which code is more important and this requires more attention during refactoring. This is epic. This is really epic. Now, coming from a very big application that we've been working on for 7 years, there was definitely times where you're like, how do I know that this code is still being used? Now, these things are very cool. So worth taking a look at if you're running or working on a big application at work and having a look at attractor and cover band. I'd love to give those a try, maybe in the future of Clipflow. So definitely have a look at that one. Okay, and here's the final chord in this little symphony. Love it. Eval Gemfile, Gemfile's Rubocop Gemfile. Cool. So what do we have? We have Gem Standard, Rubocop RSpec, and Rubocop Rails. You can learn more about their Rubocopping approach. So Rubocop, how do you describe Rubocop? It's similar to, it's basically just enforcing standards. So I guess it's similar to ESLint, probably in JavaScript world, making sure that everyone's following the same naming conventions, etc. I haven't used Rubocop in production before, but I think it's probably something that I might add now to Clipflow. We never managed to get it set up properly, but I think it's something good, especially as you bring more people onto the team, you want to follow a certain standard. I think even Rails 8 is coming with Rubocop basic setup. Let's have a look. Yeah, so here in the Rails team, we've done Rubocop Rails Amakas. I can't say that word, I'm sorry. And it's basically the basic rules for Rubocop recommended in Rails, and it'll come as standard, I think, in Rails 8. Cool. So I think we probably should jump on board there. It's probably time. So cool. Let's move on to testing. All right, so testing. Now, RSpec, for me, I like RSpec, so they've gone with that rather than, I think it's mini test, I don't even know. And FactoryBot, I love FactoryBot. It's a very good way of just defining factories, which for me, by ThoughtBot, again, another awesome team, always releasing, brand up to date. Yeah, it's just a really cool way of defining models with attributes, right? So that you can use those, you can just call in your test something.new and it's all set up for you. I do love Factory. This will definitely be part of my stack there. Love those ones. Now they also have, yeah, let's leave the heated discussion on mini tests versus RSpec alone. I like that. And also factories versus fixtures. Now, to be honest, yeah, I don't even know enough to comment on that one. So Cuprite or Cuprite is controlling the browser. So this is interesting. And then Site Prism and Capybara Thruster is a microgem which allows you to use Thruster as a web server for system tests. Okay, so yeah, Thruster is like let's have a look, a little web server. I heard DHH talk about this. Oh yeah, Basecamp's built it. So it's like a little mini server and it's just super fast, very simple. All right, Thruster is created for a once pro. All right, so a way to serve Rails applications. And then Site Prism is a page object for Capybara, and then Qprite is a headless Chrome driver for Capybara. Okay, so this is if you want to do like browser testing, and you can like click on pages and do all that kind of stuff, move your mouse, etc., etc. Very cool, part of testing. So cool. What's this one? With model is one of our favorites. A better way to test Rails model concerns. Okay, so when you're using concerns in models, dynamically builds an active record model with a table before each test and destroys it afterwards. It's actively maintained. All right, so with model. Okay, so you can include your module, I believe, is that what it's doing? With model blog post. Yeah, look, I've never had to test anything like that before. So that's an interesting one. And then we have N+1 control. You can write tests to protect yourself from N+1 queries in the future. So N+1 is, something we want to avoid. It's just when you're going to go just do a whole bunch of select. So you want to include those or join in the DB. So yeah, some tools to detect it. So it's something probably we want to add in our tests for sure. And then webmock and VCR. So VCR records the request. So if you make a request to an external service, it records that. So you can get the payload and then use that in your tests. And then webmock as well. And yeah, because sometimes what you see in tests, and it definitely happened to us in the past, is you actually connect to external services. So your tests and your pipelines run slower because it's busy making web requests, which you don't want to do. You want to keep those tests running really fast. And then also we have Zone B, is to prevent time-dependent tests to run in a random time zone. That's really handy, right? That is really, really cool. So you can run tests in different time zones, and time zones catch you all the time when you work with apps across time zones. I promise you, this got us many times. So it'll flick out and set a man, that's cool. Random time zones, okay. Get that if you're working with dates and times across countries. I will probably be getting that in Clipflow, definitely for scheduling. And then we didn't include the famous time cop gem because it's redundant for Rails apps. So you can use the inbuilt time helpers. Now we have RSpec instafail is useful when running tests on CI, yeah. And foobar is a progress bar format. Oh, that's cool. So does that tell us how much progress is left in our tests? That's sick. Look at that. That's cool. Yeah, we need that, right? That's cool. Shows us how far we got through our tests and man, that's really cool. Okay, love that. Lock that. And last release, a final is a test script. Is TestProf is a good doctor for slow Rails test suites. It doesn't matter if you have hundreds, it's always worth to make them run faster. Yes, TestProf. This is what I was talking about. Our tests in production used to take like half an hour to an hour, which is just, when you're trying to do continuous deployment, it's just not right. Just way too long. So Ruby, yeah, TestProf. Wow, Discourse reduced 27%, GitLab 39%. Oh, and it's another Evil Martians project. Look at you go. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. You're just killing it. TestProf. I love that. And that's it. Add TestProf, and that's all it. I love that, man. That's really cool. Excellent. All right. And then finally, all right, approaching the end here with everything else. So, any cable. So this is like Action Cable, or what I've used in the past, Ably, for real-time connections. So any cable, if you have a look at any cable, it's a service that they run that I believe Evil Martians run that. They don't actually say here, but you can pay for it. So you're not running it on your servers. You have to scale it. You can just hand that off to a third party, which is cool. I used to use Ably. Ably is also I had really good experience with these guys, very solid. So if you're doing WebSocket communication, especially if you're doing a React app, they have libraries and stuff for that plugged in. It's very simple. Feature toggles, who doesn't like a good feature toggle? Redlock, I don't know what that one is. Redlock gem. Redis distributed lock implementation. Shared resources in number of libraries of posts, distributed lock manager. Interesting. So you can lock a resource. Okay, I've never seen that. That's interesting. Anyway config. Ah, here we go. So they actually write them. Want to keep application configuration under control using anyway config. Please, this is another Evil Martian thing. Oh my gosh, they've done another. These guys are killing it. No more any config. This is interesting. I don't actually know exactly what you use that one for just yet. Probably need to dive into it a bit more. A retry logic. Here we go. This is cool. Retriable gem, unique identifiers, nano ID, port, and then service objects. You can use dry RB. So this is cool. So instead of doing def initialize every time, I'll show you how we're using this. So we're actually using this in ClipFlow. So if you go components and in here, and we jump into a component, let's find one that has some annotation tools, I believe has some, no? Comment, yeah. So we can now just say option comment. You used to have to say initialize, and then you'd have the comment in here like this, and then you'd write comment equals comment. Now what you can do is you just write option is that. Done. So it just makes it easier so you don't have to repeat yourself, which is dry, right? So that's a recommendation from them, and then they have dry effects. All right. So that looks like the end of that. So hopefully you found or also saw a couple of really cool ones. You can see here they actually do a change log here, and they show what they're adding and what they're removing, which is really cool, and the reasons why. And so you can keep track of this. I think it's a great place to actually check out and just compare your gem files every now and then, because if you're creating lots of projects, you'll probably reach for the same tools. And sometimes they can become stale, unsupported, and these guys have done a whole bunch of work, especially because they're supporting very big clients, to make sure everything works well. So check it out, evilmartians.com, and then look for the gem file. And I'll drop a link in the description below so you can check it out. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.